All right, I think we can get started while audience are still trotting in. I'll start with a short introduction. Yeah, so very good morning to everyone attending the Luminary session titled Designing for Placemaking as part of the Luminary for Gallery Weekend Kuala Lumpur. And this is the 6th edition of Gallery Weekend Kuala Lumpur. And for me, GWKL actually represents a platform for multidisciplinary creatives that emphasizes on accessibility, inclusivity, and affordance to art and the broader creative scenes. And this Luminary program has been the anchor feature of Gallery Weekend Kuala Lumpur, where we are engaged with a variety of experts coming from different disciplines related to art, design, spaces, and places, amongst others. And today it is indeed our pleasure to have the Luminary program titled Placemaking. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Veronica Ng, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm the head of school and associate professor in the School of Architecture, Building and Design from Taylor's University. And at heart, I'm a placemaker myself while curating some placemaking initiatives with my students throughout my academic journey, being an educator at Taylor's University. And coincidentally, my PhD topic was also about place. And when given the opportunity to curate and moderate the session for placemaking, I jumped on right into it. And I hope I have brought together a panel of dynamic individuals that can respectively share their initiatives on placemaking for all of us here today. Placemaking, it's not about a product. It is more actually about the process. So I hope today our luminaries here today would be able to share with us some of the approaches, processes, challenges, and of course more so the products of their placemaking ideas or ideals, whether they are manifested or whether they are being conceived. Placemaking to me is a very much extreme between being creative on one hand and being entrepreneurial on the other. Because in order to make things work, we need a lot of guts. We need a lot of support from people beyond ourselves. So I'm really looking forward to the Luminaries presentation today. But before we start, let me gently remind all of the audience here today to please mute your mic and videos to avoid distraction. So this session is divided into two main parts. The first main part, of course, will be the speaker's presentation that takes up to approximately an hour, followed by moderated and open panel discussion for another hour or so, and we will do a wrap up at the end of the session. So without further ado, let us begin the session. I will first introduce our first luminary today, Lee Cheng-yi. Cheng-yi received his architecture degree from RMIT University, Melbourne in the year 2002. After spending a decade working in Shanghai, London, and Kuala Lumpur, Cheng-yi founded Form Zero in 2012, an architectural research studio injected with the ideology of re-engaging the architecture with tropical landscape in the urban context. His design approach often focuses on challenging the conventional architectural typologies and the boundaries of urban realm. Form Zero also serves as a think tank that runs within MOA Architects in Kuala Lumpur. So with pleasure, I would like to invite Lee Cheng-yi to the stage. Over to you, Cheng-yi.
Thank you, Veronica. Good morning. Let me share my screen right now. Okay. I think I'm going to present today 3 particular projects and just a portions of them. And while I was sorting out what to talk about placemaking, of course, I think there are a lot of things that we have done and we are going to do has a lot to do with the last 2 years of pandemic and how it changed our public behavior particularly. So that is something that I want to take this opportunity to have a self-reflections of how that may also influence me, especially as a designer, to look forward and to also use it as a chance to review what we have done. I think while the topic of today is about placemaking, I think there are 2 very important aspects of placemaking that I want to share. Number 1 is how does a public place or architecture empower the public? And the second thing is who limits and constrains the behavior between public and private. So, while this is very familiar to all of us who are living in an urban context with a typical neighborhood of all the tamans, residential, while it wasn't very common during my childhood that boom gate and roadblocks and fence gate is actually less common in the old time, where the urban fabric and the entire systems of the urban structure actually is getting a bigger and bigger parcel to limit our pedestrians movement especially. And of course, this is like one of my neighborhood where they start to build up a lot more private fence to limit the permeability of the urban. Of course, whether it is for private reasons, crimes, or to control the public movements. And on the other hand, I was also looking at other aspects that will inspire me. Many years ago, when I was very young, I went to Angkor Wat. I was so inspired by the inseparable conditions between landscape and architecture. I was having a big questions. If one day all these trees are removed from these ancient artifacts and relics, will Angkor Wat still be what it is today? How would that change its perceptions from us? And while I also spent so many years living in the Western country, that in the West, what we have learned, it's always a very clear demarcations of boundary of how people walk and how functions and program has been defined. Everything has a clear line. But where I grew up, actually, this is where I grew up when I was a kid, in a new village in Kampong Baru, somewhere at the south of Cheras. So my house is actually 2 lots away. And this middle house, where is my current great grand uncle is still living there by himself. And when 2 years ago, when I passed by, I thought that it became an abandoned house. But my mom told me actually it is not. He actually purposely let the wild bushes and the tree grow over the whole frontage to gain some privacy. And not only that, he's sort of using this landscape as a camouflage and also as a fence. And he also put the chicken coop and also grow some fruit trees and use it as a storage as well. So you actually can walk through this tiny little path and to enter the house, where most people would not dare to trespass when you look at that. So the entire house and the landscape and the entire street sort of merged together. And I was like, wow. Another very important thing that I have to recall from my memory is that we have a rain tree in my high school where I think it is almost like the focus of the entire school during the PE day moments and during the sports day and after school. It's constantly having all the friends and people hanging down the tree. If the tree were just give us so much possibility of what we can do in that context, and of course, including performance. So when we are 3 years ago, when we were commissioned to design Petronas, I think 25 anniversaries pavilion in KLCC, we start to think about how can we create a completely different kind of public space. They don't have a particular brief for us. They basically want to have a system, a structure that can engage with the public. So then we start to think about the tree, the giant tree. So we have designed this very digitalized sort of look into transform a giant tree into a structure where this entire tree is actually made of tiny little fiberglass cube. They are structurally self-load bearing, means that it doesn't rely on any internal structure support, so they are fixed to each other. And so that is what the models look like. It's actually made of 3 trees that merge into one and to form a stage, sort of a stage look. And that is structure model designed by our collaborator engineer, OHR. So the entire process is extremely painstaking because every little cubes of the structure of the fiberglass cube has to be calculated. And what we want is trying to mimic a giant tree that's almost like a park. And this is the how we work with the fiberglass company. And we've gone through a lot of tests, structure tests, screw tests, fixing tests, in order to see how the cubes can be self-support. And because this is a system and a structure system that nobody have done, and we have to carry the entire process from design, testing the structure, and fabricating, and to deliver on site to build it within, I think, 2 months and 5 days of installing it. And this is one the sort of the outcome that we were imagining, that a tree structures made of 3 trees that allow the free flows of the public. It doesn't seem like there is a particular purpose, and I think that is the purpose, that where we're trying to design a stage light at the same time that allow the public can easily flow in, whether they want to do something or not. It has to feel like they are just hanging down the trees. And that is end of the results, where all the fiberglass has coated with this very special self-reflective paint that will respond to a different kind of lighting. So this is one of the, this is actually the opening ceremony where they invited the MPO to perform. And the entire systems was allowed, the module of the box, the cubes, it's also part of the sittings, the projector screens, the audio and visual systems. Almost everything has been integrated as one. And the public basically can pull out the cubes and move around and sit wherever they are. Of course, at the time, it became a big Instagram moment for a lot of people. I think 3 years ago, I don't think Instagram was as hot as today. And you can see during the crowded day, it's almost the crowd really blend into the entire place. And the lightings that completely will, the pavilion will completely reflect whatever lightings that the lighting designer, and that is giant screens also serve as digital screens to for advertisements or to showcase any message want to carry by Petronas. And within the 5 days, we have employed almost like 8 architects just to work on this. The Red Hill Gallery is a sales gallery that we did a few years ago. What is really interesting is that this sales gallery is located in the middle of plantations, and that is the middle of the forest. When we got to the place, we cannot enter, and the clients say that you don't need to enter. They were just going to wipe off the entire hill and make it flat. So there's no point to investigate the context decor. So, but I don't want to give up. So when I look at the Google map, we saw that it's a patch of a different texture of these little things. So we convinced the clients to keep it and just remove all the palm oil trees. But of course, when the development starts to build the housing, they have to flatten the entire hill and almost like nothing. We call it a tabula rasa at the end, means zero context. But this is the tree that we keep. And funny enough, it looks like all banded rubber tree estate, where they have already abandoned it long time ago. And of course, when I was a kid, I think when I was 5, I actually followed my mom. She's a rubber taper. So I had vaguely, I would remember what is it like to wake up in the 3 a.m. So I was a bit excited to see that. So I decided to keep that rubber trees as part of the project. Originally, the rubber trees is where the building is going to be located. So after a long fight with the clients, we convinced the clients not to allow the visitor drop off to enter the actual buildings, but to convince the client to allow the visitor to walk through the forest first before they arrive. So the forest will serve as the entrance. And even though it's a very small piece of rubber tree mini forest, I think the experience of arriving without seeing the actual buildings was keeping it completely like a very mysterious experience, where we try not to cut down too much of the rubber trees, and where we want to make the experience, because the ground is not really flat, the land that we keep. So we have to build a sort of floating platforms, walk on top, and the visitor need to wander between the trees. Where actually this is a very low budget project when we do this, because the clients has never agreed to number one, keep the forest, and also spend more money just to build this pedestrian walk. So everything is very basic, low-end materials, and you can see that the landscape architect trying to be very careful just to protect every single trees. While you slowly wander between the trees, then that is a red building, which is the sales gallery that we designed, happen in the background. I think that is a very important cultural context here, where the rubber tree is a very important agricultural symbol to a lot of people. I mean, including my mother, who was a rubber tapper. And of course, a lot of regions that they rely, their economy actually rely on them. So I was trying to keep that as sort of a good cultural memorial, actually the entire rubber tree park. And so this is where it leads, the path leads to the entrance of the sales gallery, which is not the point of the talk today. And this is where it's slowly open up when you get out of the mini forest. So very soon when we completed the Red Hill Gallery, we went to join competitions by PAM to design a mosque. I am always fond of religious building. So Mosque of Forest is somewhere at the south of Johor Bahru. So we have learned something about how in the Quran, there is a story about how the prophets, when he's giving the talks, and then it sort of touched the tree, and the tree even cried. So there is a relationship between sending the message between humans, prophets, and the nature, and they are connected as one. So we are thinking of a place where the functions has completely expandable and can be reduced, and there is no particular constraints of where the function can be. And we also want to design a mosque where it actually allows a different community to do a different things. And it almost want to feel like it is a free form things, or maybe there's not even a form. So eventually we thought that maybe we should not design a mosque. We should just design a public park where people can almost do whatever they want. And so we decided to design a forest, planted lots of columns in between to camouflage, whether you're saying the column is camouflaged by the tree or tree camouflaged by the columns. And it allowed you to redefine a different regions within that. So this is the final result, where there is a flat ground with a different functions, but separated by just a few glass wall. Then we planted a huge trees across the whole ground with a super tall timber glass roof. And the end result is as if there is really no building. I think that is our message. I think what is really placemaking is really having a public place that's giving the public more freedoms, more activities, and that allow us and allow everyone to be connected without sense of boundary. I think that's very important. And that is my last slide. I have visited so many mosques in many places. And the top slide is every time I go to site visit, the worker or the entire construction worker will use the forest as their rest place, because that's the most free place to them. And whereas below, every time I go to mosque during the non-prayer time, is where a lot of general public, they rest there. As if they just feel as comfortable as home. I think that it's a connections between. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chenyi. From your presentation, I gathered two important keywords. Number one is boundaries, and number two is negotiation. So thank you for your inspiring sharing here. We will move on to the second speaker, and let me introduce Xin Sheng, who is a creative director and a co-founder of Rex KL. Xin graduated with a distinction in Master of Architecture from the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL London, He's an architectural designer and creative entrepreneur. And he is also the co-founder and managing director of Rex KL and partner and creative director of Urban Agenda Design. His signature work of urban placemaking is Rex KL, an adaptive reuse of an old cinema into a cultural and creative hub aimed to be a catalyst to rejuvenate downtown Kuala Lumpur. Taking on a multifaceted placemaking approach, including planning, design, and management, Shin's work display a concerted effort to shape the public realm in order to maximize shared value. Without further ado, let me invite Shin to the stage. Shin, over to you.
Thanks, Veronica. It's a pleasure to be here. Exciting morning. Let's jump right to it. Yeah, I think before we go into these the whole placemaking thing, we just want to take a step back and sort of explain why we did the project and how we came together as a collective of architects and creatives and designers to activate this old building that we found in Jalan Sultan, Kuala Lumpur. So I think if you talk to people around this area, Petaling Street of Jalan Sultan, what Rex means to KLites or even Malaysians is almost equate to a social place or entertainment. And Rex cinema almost equate to this sort of a gathering place for entertainment in many cities as well, many towns in Malaysia. Even in a smallest town like in the days of Perlis, right? There's a Rex in in every state. In Singapore, Rex was once converted as well. So it's funny that how a name of a cinema became an experience to a lot of people. And when we took over the building, we did a bit of research of what the building was. Right, it was called Park Peng Ayun, which is the founder of the cinema, as well as half of the Petaling Street or Jalan Sultan. It's a Chong Wing Chan family, who was the developer of this cinema. This is the first version of Rex cinema on Jalan Sultan, and in 1940s, and it was operated by Shaw Brothers from Hong Kong, and then converted into Golden Screen Cinema, and after that. They'll go into multiplex, and the cinema went into deterioration. So this is from Merdeka report. Everyone can take a look at it. So this is what it was before the first version of the cinema. It's a purpose-built cinema for 1,200 people to watch on a single screen. The architecture itself is marvelous, but we're not going to go into detail of that. Also, we're trying not to be too romantic about what cinema was, but this is a beautiful cinema, and what we're gonna talk about today is the experience of what it means to the locals or the people around here, the community around here. So of course, it's been through a few fires. This is the last fire that put it to this is the last fire before we took over. After the second fire, that hostel took over, and so the cinema moved out and the hostel took over and turned into a hostel. And when we went into this space in 2018, this is how it looked. You can clearly see the fire marks on the wall. You can see that the plaster fell off, and no furniture left, because after the second fire, the hostel and the club occupied the building and turned it into something else, right? So it took us 9 months to discard, debris and partitions in the building. It was called the Dragon Hostel. So sometimes when they can't find Rex, or I just asked them to Google Dragon Hostel, and it still works. And you can see the entire facade has been on the street level is blocked up by this very typical scene in Jalan Sultan and Petaling Street. So there was almost no entrance, and for a long time, people forgot about this cinema, forgot about this once iconic cultural institution in Petaling Street. As you can see, some Marshall Duisham installation around. Because it was a hostel, there was constant renovation of bathrooms. Then we managed to take down the ceiling. If you notice the difference between before and now, there was a ceiling on this floor that covered the cinema floor because they were used as a hostel, and they just covered up the triple volume space. That's when the ceiling fell, and you can see partially what the hostel was. So the cleaning process itself is architecture of in the making, what we call it, by demolishing what was what doesn't belong to the building. And we don't have a lot of money because, again, it's a grassroots initiative, self-funded project. So the statement is to keep the structure of an old cinema and what we found in a cinema, right? And just demolish or strip off whatever doesn't belong. And some floors fell off due to illegal construction throughout the years of this Dragon Hostel. We put up a makeshift signage as a statement that we took over the building. As you see, we really don't have money. Then we push the signage out to say hi to the street, to Jalan Sultan. That was the first time we have the appearance. So this is what it was before, and this is how it looks now. As you go to Petaling Street, we're still working with the vendors in front of Rex, just to relocate them towards the side lane that we are working on. That's what we call Rex GWKL 3.0, which I'll come in a minute. So just shout out to my partners in crimes and comrades: Shin Chang, Kamil, Wai Leong, Seksan, Joseph, and Fufa. So 4 of them from the Kongking Ipoh. If you know Ipoh well, there's another project by this group of people. And Shin Chang and I partnered up, and we approached them and work on this project together. So give you the context of Jalan Sultan. So we are in between Petaling Street and Jalan Sultan. This is where Rex GWKL is, in front of Kota Raya. This is the famous Petaling Street, our luxury goods market. So Petaling Street, to most of us from Malaysia or KL would know it very well. It's called Chichongai. Recently, there's been crowned a new name called Chinatown, which gives me a cringe when they say it, because it was never a Chinatown. It was just a tourism gimmick. We don't go into that, but so throughout the years, the evolution of Petaling Street has gone in from a very local, hyper-local context into a neighborhood, into this almost foreign kind of situation, because it's driven by short-term tourism, what I call fast cash economy. And a lot of it drives away a lot of local businesses, because when you have fast turnover, that sort of rental also goes up, right, around the area. So it pushes away a lot of local businesses, and due to ill planning of this part of town, people stop coming, the locals stop coming in, and we just see these businesses being replaced by new businesses. There's nothing good or bad, it's just that that's what has happened. Again, Think City has done a lot of work around this area, so I just want to use that as our reference, because this information are all accessible online. So if you're interested to find out more about downtown KL or Petaling Street, or what we're working on now as part of a new movement called the KLCCD, KL Cultural and Creative District, that's all available on the Think City website. So this is where we are, and they have mapped out the whole area within downtown KL, with category of heritage buildings, type of business, traits, population, etc., etc. So we are sort of in the middle of the whole master plan. So we are quite fortunate that we are part of this downtown collective movement. This is a 10 years plan with GWKL, between Think City and GWKL, now with a new partner of PNB coming into the picture. So these are all current context and background. We are not we're in a historic area of downtown KL, but we are not a historic category 1 building. So in a way, there's a risk of being demolished and being redeveloped. So that's one of the motivation of us coming in, is to also, preserve this iconic building or experience that once happened in Petaling Street. So there are a lot of plans going on, like greening Petaling Street area to make it walkable, make it livable. These are all proposals by Think City. I just want to put it out there. So, we want to encourage more people to come back to this part of town to be part of this movement. It's all available online. We work closely with the stakeholders and neighborhoods and communities around, just to be part of this. And one thing is interesting is that there's a lot of creative industries and cultural services around this area, and almost 70% of them are around this area. And second to that is architectural service, which is quite interesting. We can find in downtown KL. So there are abundance of architects working around KL. So I believe that there's a hope for all of us. We want to come back and rejuvenate this part of KL. But one interesting thing is that there are 50,000 workers coming in and out every day, but it's less than 10%, right? Only 6% who are actually living in this city. So you can see the contrast between day and night. And there's always this misperception of downtown is really congested. It's partly true due to this reason, and untrue at night because no one is ever living in the city. So at night it's almost like a ghost town, except those coming into this part of town for food or drinks or entertainment. We also align with the whole strategy of GWKL and Think City to develop downtown KL into a premier creative and cultural district. First is to enhance the creative cultural ecosystem, improve the state of conservation, improve public realms, improving accessibility and connectivity. And then we want to repopulate the city by creating co-living, perhaps something we can look into in the future, and develop a framework, a policy that really improve the coordination and curation of cultural content. We are really aligned with this strategy, and we wish to be part of this more actively. So let's talk about the locale, right? Which is different from the local. I like the word locale because it indicates a place, an environment, a setting where things happen. And what we're trying to preserve here is not the architecture itself, but what happened in this building before. So what is Rex again to Malaysian? So we have to us, cinema is entertainment. So we have to redefine what cinema was, as we now no longer watch movie on the silver screen. We all have Netflix on our device. So how to then bring 1,000 people back to the same space and watch a show? So definition of show has changed, right? For the past decades. So the journey of rediscovering the meaning for Rex has become somewhat aspirational and inspirational. So we started with a flower market, how to bring people back to this place, because this is a place where people social, it's like they come to Rex for big events, when they have the first date. So this is the first event we put up during Chinese New Year, after we semi-cleaned up the building. And then we have a couple of activation with some brands, Perry in a sense, promotes subculture. And then few more film festivals with Urbanscape and B&W Shorties, couple of screening with Sunny Films, and then we bring the film out of cinema because we don't really have a cinema anymore, but the film screening has a different definition and different purposes. So we bring the movie out of the cinema onto the street for street activation, backlane activation. This is a project with Think City called the Backlane Cinema. There's altogether 5 editions of it. So we activated different parts of downtown with this collaboration with filmmakers, local filmmakers. Just a big shout out to them. A lot of good films that I discovered as well. So redefine dating. So it becomes, because when you ask around what Rex means to the locals, especially our parent generation, it means a place for them to have a first date. So we created events for this sort of experience, right? Well-being, couple come together, do yoga in a cinema hall, so etc. So we had redefined shows. This is the Rex in Singapore actually, but it's very similar when there's a blockbuster coming town. You see people queuing up. So how do we then redefine shows and recreate the experience? So show to us has changed. Now we are trying to discover local talents, try to bring up the local creative scene. So we highlight only the local artists and talents, of course with regional and international artists as well, but mainly focusing on the local talents. And that actually brought in a lot of crowd into the place. So these are the collaborations with a series of local entrepreneurs, artists, business owners, creatives, brands throughout the past 2 years. Of course, the 1.5 years are in the lockdown, but so cultural shows. So we work with agencies to bring in more cultural relevant activities. So one of the things that we want to focus on is the cultural equity. So international, acts shouldn't be, up there. I mean, local acts should be, as par as international acts, which is what we wish for. This some architectural exhibition. So the mission is to bring people back together and share ideas, inspiration, experience, and build a common voice for Kuala Lumpur. So it's really inward looking in the sense that in the greater context of Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia, we want to highlight a lot of hyper-local experiences with the local tenants. So that's what we are trying to conserve. And the next phase is to connect with Jalan Sultan and the surrounding areas. So the building has, there was no wall at the beginning, but due to the SOP currently, we have to close it up on the site. But initially, the whole idea is to open up the whole ground floor as a public space, and then people can wander up to the hall as another urban piazza in a cinema hall when we're not in use. So the methodology that we deployed is kind of tie back to what this forum is about. So we're going to this a bit more about. I think this is quite important in the sense of how it guides us through the process of running Rex, is to revise a place, to elevate the people that we have, to have crossover with partners, with collaboration, we share knowledge to programs, and we would like to be the leader of a purpose. Of course, that is through innovation, creativity, management, and impacts and values. So as a place, we are creative hubs. We believe that creativity can bring people together and also overlook a lot of differences of each other that can unite different culture and different backgrounds. We like to empower our people through this through art, different expression of art. And collaboration is the one that we are really focusing on by engaging the right partners or identify people who want to collaborate with, because by having different people working together, that we can achieve something even bigger. So we're we are not just a venue, but we really heavily collaborating with different artists and business owners. And the whole idea is to then create programs that cultivate creative capital for the city. And that is the purpose that is guiding us. We try to create cultural equity, which means that it is really inclusive. So we welcome all kind of expressions, especially the marginal sort of arts. And social impact is how we measure it. So it's not about the KPI, but it's about the stakeholders' voice. So we refer to SOPAC heavily. This is another thing that we can spend another day to talk about. But so just to run through this, what happened for the past, and it's always changing because of this social impact that we are constantly using to measure our progress. So the space is always fluid and evolving. So we come today, it might be different when you come back next week or next month. And currently we have an installation in the making with Chindana. It's going to be a month-long in visual projection mapping in a cinema hall. So do come by. So that is the purpose of how what is driving us. It's all about people. It's about community that we always focus on, because without people there's no place, and without that there's no creativity we can talk about. So entrepreneurs is one of the projects. This is the background is one of the projects that we started during the lockdown. MCO 2.0 is to bring back local farmers, to bring back local entrepreneurs, to provide them a space to incubate their business during this tough time. So we subsidize the rental, subsidize the renovation with crowdfunding, which is another measure of how we measure success for the project. I'm gonna run through quickly. I know I'm running out of time. So the GWKL 2.0 was what happened for the past year and a half. Because of pandemic, it got slowed down. We have finally built a bookstore on the mezzanine floor above the venue, and it's opening. It has opened yesterday, so do come by next week or so. That's book access, by the way. So GWKL 3.0 is what we are aiming for next year. We would like to restore the building, or the facade of the building, in a different way. As I say, it's not a really historical listed building, but heritage listed building. But we like to give back what it was. So that's what we are trying to raise funds for as well, and try to green the side lane and create more public spaces on Jalan Sultan, and then link the market with Petaling Street and also another alley market to activate the whole back alley of Petaling Street and between Jalan Sultan and Petaling Street. So this is a project that we are proposing to GWKL, open up the street and the building to create the sort of borderless architecture and urban spaces that really link the public realm into the building. So that's all for my sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Shin. I like your statement where you said that there is a need to rediscover meaning in the locale and the whole purpose of rejuvenating a space. I'm sure now it is really inclusive, because even children will actually come to GWKL with book access being there. So you have added another layer of inclusivity. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So thank you, Shin. We will move on to our final speaker for today before we break out into discussion and Q&A session. Yeah, so let us welcome Wendy Teo. I will do a short introduction of her. Wendy is an architect and artist and founder of Borneo Laboratory. Born in Borneo, Wendy received her Bachelor of Architecture with distinction from Taiwan Fengchia University, Masters of Architecture with distinction from Bartlett, UCL. Wendy is an ARB RIBA Chartered Architect and founder of Borneo Laboratory, a multidisciplinary practice based in Borneo. In Chio's research and pedagogical direction, she and her team focus on embedding social culture dialogue, informing architectural innovations. Wendy's work displays a strong connection to the Borneo secluded and forgotten cultures, with the intent to prevent cultural erasure. Her works reflect the Borneo spirit, bringing together art, culture, architecture, education, and community building in an inclusive manner. So let us welcome Wendy. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation as well. So I'm definitely feel like very honored to be, such inspiring like palettes of panelists. So today I want to start from sharing a story about like what we have been doing recently, Think and Think. So it's also a My Factory we want to insert in the city, yeah. So before that, like I will need to kind of explain like how we started, like from 2018 to 2020. So this used to be our space, like Borneo.
Sorry to interrupt, Wendy.
Sorry?
You are a little bit soft. Can you speak louder?
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, yeah.
Yep, that's perfect.
Is it better now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So the space was renovated from a residential house into an art space. So you can imagine the kind of like problem it will carry as well, because of the when we do event. At first, when we first started, it wasn't really a lot of people because it was more like a smaller group. But then, like as the time like developed, it like the crew the people came to our event became more, and also it's kind of bring in traffic and also problems, so there was a lot of complaint and report being made. So back in our mind we felt that like at one point we need to move out from this space, because we set out the first site specific theater in Kuching, and when we first started, like it was already quite well received. So every times when we do the event, like per event, like easily more than 80 people will come, and then that will also like basically like clutter the entire area as well, so it became a real problem. So in 2020 we came across this building, Think and Think supermarket. At that point it was dilapidated and also abandoned because of so it used to be a supermarket, so we thought perfect, it's in the downtown, and because of its location and the neighborhood that it was in, it seems to be a perfect location for us to start expanding our venture, looking into a more stable place for developing our theater project and also our community. So before that, like probably I should also explain a little bit about like how Borneo Lab developed over the years. We started as an online documentation platform like since 2017 with crowdfunding resources, and this is actually the first Malaysian art and culture initiative that's set in Kickstarter. So together with that, we also launched our publication department, and we released our second book with the crowdfunding. So with our project, like we always tie in a profit sharing model. So with each of the project, actually we engage more than 20 people, like and then manage to kind of grow a crowd and also a community with it. And since 2018, we launched our tangible platform and space. So then we can look into the tangible research workshop, art performances, art residencies, and it is also easier for us to kind of like launch a series of urban discourse through art and architectural curation. But then COVID happened. I think it's the same situation faced by all of us. It was also a crossroad for Borneo Lab, whether we should stay online or move back to online, move back to offline. So we felt that in the time that when we are doing a lot of like active work or offline, actually we gather the crowd. But the thing is like it will be too risky during the COVID time. So we felt that we need a time to think. And it was also seems to be like the lockdown time seems to be a perfect opportunity to do so. But we want to do it collectively. So we launched our online book club. To be honest, it was the 7th book club we have done annually. Yeah. So in this is an extract from our new normal like reading club in 2020. So on this is touch on like what's our mission of art in the times of new normal. Yeah, so you can see like 3 points of view. The first point of view is like, oh, it should be just aesthetically pleasing. And some people talk about like for example Nicolas like talk about like it should be contextually meaningful. Yeah, or it could be a safe haven for transdisciplinary experimentation, like what Robert Philo has suggested, a right of asylum to divine practice, which cannot find their place in their natural bed. And we felt that, you know, is something that we incline toward as well. Yeah, and there's another book that I want to bring out as well, like what is that means to have the public leadership, and public leadership actually enable progressive cooperation. Yeah, corporatism. So which means like asking bigger question and put the citizen before capital and the corporation as a social movement and action, not words. Yeah, so we felt that these are the things that in fact during this time, especially this crossroad of the history, we need a place to enable so. So in this era of Anthropocene, it's probably the time to install a thinking organ within the community, therefore think and think. So can encourage the city to connect widely, think deeply, and act daringly. So that was also an artistic statement of the place. Yeah. So but then it's come with like you know, a few questions, like quite key question, like can we make it safe? Can we make it work? Can we address our present from here? So we know that we need to rethink the contact and circulation, and also we need to rethinking like the model of participation in operation, and we need to address our present through planning, strategy, and event. But how does it work during the COVID time? Especially everyone kind of associate public realm as danger. They associate density as like disaster. So this is something that like we thought, okay, for the conventional planning model, it comes from okay, design planning and then construction, and then move on to the other stage, call for tenants, and then move into operation when things doesn't when after that we get the crowd feedback, but when things goes wrong, you go back to square number one. And we felt that like, you know, we need to do things differently. So in our planning model, we have the testing device before we even launch start doing any design or planning, and we already start doing the kind of operation, means like, you know, some of the content we knew that we will launch in the building and get the crowd feedback, and from there we can start doing and repairing or planning or start calling for the right tenant and doing construction and operation. So the benefit of it is like we can set out the address before we do the construction. So we got the building like lease in last year October. So that was also the time we launched an event, so people already know about like the place. But then after that we start doing our planning and construction. Yeah, so it's also kickstart the conversation before it's even you know, come to the stage of completion. So even until today we are still working on it. Yeah, so feedback already gathered from the event, which can also help to inform the design and planning of our space, and co-producing with the public mass, which is something that we felt that this building need like along the process of planning. So yeah, this is the thinking device that we inserted at the beginning of the planning, like rethinking public relations. So there are 4 testing devices we did like along the way. So for the testing device is like one is an installation to engage the public like opinions, and the other one is an immersive theater, and also outdoor films and wishing trees. Yeah, so for the immersive theater, like how could we set out a theater, admit only 5 people per round, and the entire show is designed based on the SOP control. Yeah, so then we can also explore the spatial potential in theater during the new normal. Yeah, So the viewpoint and the scenes was based on the existing spaces, like because of the like for example, people can view it from different point of the building to see what. Yeah. So for the sign of hop, like the moment people enter the building, they will see like hop. Yeah. They come to think upon their arrival to when they come to the space. The neighborhood, and which is quite important for us. Yeah, so I know exactly how you feel. Empathy is hop. So these are the story we get from the neighborhood, and then this is how it is right now, and we felt that like we need to expand another wall for it. Yeah, because of the neighborhood has been quite quite welcoming in terms of their attitude, like toward the building and also the place. So we felt quite grateful. And then the other one is wish tree. How do we set out omni-channel installation grew through online input, and also set out a temporary landscape for the car park to kind of get an idea of like how the car park can be converted into. Yeah. So these also help us to get some idea about like, yeah, with the space we have, like how could we plan them? How people react to the planning. And yeah, so this last year October lockdown time, like people still come to our space, but then they come in different time, yeah, to view the show, to check out the exhibition. Yeah, so and apart from that, because of the long lockdown, we felt that, you know what, for a long time we have been working with the craftsmen around the region. But then because of the lockdown, a lot of them also lost their income as well. We felt that like their story need to be embedded in the building. Like so one of the craftsmen we work with is like the tinsmith, to kind of showcase how the tin can be used as the display board as well for our studio. So then it's kind of inspire more people to asking question like, where can we get that and how much is it? Yeah. So, and the other thing is like, it's also to be used as a place to display Borneo carpentry potential as well. If you look at we are quite blessed because in Borneo we have the biodiversity of over the timber. So if you look at the craftsmen, like what they do, what they capable of doing, and also the way they can put like, select the nice like timber texture and put it like over the finishing. So this is also what we were looking at. The other one is the soil. So we set out a series of small-scale workshops to encourage a collective input over the mud experimentation with the mud and soil collected around the region. So like, rather than like looking at just one recipe, we help our participants to structure their own recipe. So then they understand instead of like using the conventional Nippon pan, or nothing wrong about the, the pan, but just, how could we have alternative pan that like can be extracted locally? And also, it's all about like, whether you're willing to look at your soil and DIY rather than seeing them as dirt. Actually, they can be also something valuable for setting out the your interior tone as well. So this project is also now part of the British Council Cultural True Connection, like the research fund. So it comes to the second round already. And of course like some in-house fund, like furniture building, and we were also working with our steel tradesmen to look at like how to put together the 50-meter lighting in our space. So to set out the flow gallery. So the idea is like, don't go with the flow, be the flow. So this is what Rumi told Sham, so the Sufism master. And how could we inspire more practitioner or entrepreneur to set out their own venture and collaborate with us in the space. And the furniture design as well. So I wouldn't be able to go through all of the space, but at the moment we have the art residency and think tank and performing arts, which is what we kind of initiated the plan for, and the exhibition spaces and cafe. So we're constantly looking for different ideas to incubate inside the space. And if you go around the building, you'll be able to find like all these like small phrases. At like for example, this one in the back door of our toilet. At the moment of despair or the moment of victory, remember these two shall pass. So it's also a reminder to us and everyone that, you know, either moment is like these two shall pass. So just be humble and just do what we can do for now. Yeah, coming to this, yeah, in introduction of like inspired by the concept of Berjalai, which means like big trip. So in the past, like people used to live secludedly in their own community. They get their value, ethic, or thoughts about life, like probably through their community or from their ancestor. But once in their life, they need to travel a big trip. This is when they meet new people, you know, have their idea grow or crush, but they always come back as a mature being. So this that like we want to engage, constantly think about and engage in the way we work with others. Yeah, so fundamentally we have 4 pillars that we are focusing on. The first one is design part, which we work on furniture scale, architectural scale, and installation scale. And the second part is like because we want to work with more people, so we in order to have more breadth, like we have curatorial service as well, which we work with like agency, festival bodies or NGO. But in order to have more depth in the kind of thinking that we set out, or the kind of trajectory that like we want to pursue, we also look at collaborating with educational institute and designer, artisan around the region. And like so with all the work we do, we want to make sure that it was properly documented. So then we publish our books as well. So our plan is 10 years, 5 books. And at the moment, we are planning our 3rd one and 4th one. So we already released our 1st and 2nd one. Yeah, so these are the things that like the image related to the things that I was speaking about. But today I'm just going to focus on some selected project to talk about participatory models and the materiality. Yeah, so with I think like all the time what we are trying to do is crafting a gathering of people. And for the first project I want to speak about is the bamboo research that we were doing, like in terms of the like the tectonic and also the way of like treatment. Yeah, so with this project we were invited to do a bamboo pavilion in 2018. But then we realized, despite the abundance of the bamboo type we have in Borneo, we already lost the craftsmen or lost the carpentry or the contractor for it. So we realized at that point we need to, you know, like revive or innovate upon the kind of like material we can get from the region and learning from other regions, like, and bringing them back. So with this project, we were looking at like collaborating with the Bidayu village around Kuching, and to find out what can be done. And so the end product of the project is to reunite all this like knowledge together. So for a lot of designer or potentially like architect, like probably this project cannot end here because we already got the photo and also we already got the event done. But the thing is that we realize it's so important to kind of put them into documentation and to really keep the knowledge and pass down the knowledge. So that was also why we start making that into a book. And it's not simply applicable to bamboo, but also rattan and bark and timber, which we work with other designer and artisan to enable so. And the book was funded through crowdfunding, and we are quite lucky because after we release it, like it's also get a lot of good responses. Yeah. So if you're interested in our book, shameless promotion, you can come to our website to check it out. Yeah. So and the second year, because of like 2018 project was quite successful in terms of the feedback. So the same festival director came to me and say like, why don't we do another bamboo pavilion, you know, in the city center? But this time around, if we want to do it, like I just felt that like we need to do it differently. And how about like carry on doing the education parts that like we miss out doing like on 2018. So it was a bamboo pavilion in the city center. And if you ever come to Kuching, you will kind of like notice that people explain their address through like, oh, I live in first mile, I travel to second mile, I hang out in third mile. It all has to do with have a 0 point in the city. Yeah, so and that 0 point was our site. Yeah, so this is how that 0 point looked like, colonial building set out. And for me at that point, it was about like redefining that origin rather than a colonial one. How could we really change that narrative? Yeah, with the material we have locally and built by the local rather than ourselves like the first one. So we actually spending more time like translating the design into an IKEA booklet that enable people to come together and build things together. So we managed to gather like more than 60 people to build it. Yeah, so we also partner with school over their curriculums, like how to teach the younger generation to build it together. So the entire thing was done like within 3 weeks time. Yeah, it was quite fascinating to see like through the collective effort actually that can be done, and especially from people having no background in architecture or buildings. Yeah, so you can see this is how it was look like, and it's also partnered with like some performance to put together some show. Yeah. So this is the Kuching night view. Yeah, and the other one is like it's kind of fast forward to, you know, when after pandemic happened, and we realized we need to unite like the city again, but then it has to through an instrument that is more like related to sustainable living. Yeah, so planting is beautiful. I'm sure that during the pandemic time, a lot of people stay at home doing a lot of DIY and plant things, and we were doing that as well. And we felt that that has to, you know, come together as a even bigger collective scale. So in 2020 October 28, I think like most of you have read this like articles from El País. It talks about like ventilated space is actually reduce the chance of like, you know, infection. But you see like in Southeast Asia, people hang out in the shopping mall. So it's all enclosed space. And how could we have alternative model to counter like balance that? So it was also one of the things that we thought about. So we thought about like having like starting the building should start from a humble gesture, and that gesture should carry like a sustainable story, sustainable meanings behind it. So edible gardens like around the building, which the first one is the so the butterfly garden. So before that, we launched a citywide campaign to collect plastic bottle. Yeah, I want to show you. Yeah. Okay, we asked for 1,500 like plastic bottle around the city, partners with 10 entities around the city, and then we managed to get like I think nowadays it's like probably 4,000, 5,000. So we have to kind of look at like what could be the alternative, like you know, reuse for it as well. So as you can see, it's in the city center. And why is carry this particular patterns that is like similar to butterfly is because we believe in, you know, during the COVID pandemic time, a lot of people you start to see like a variety of attitude toward livings and like vaccination. So during that time, like we thought, you know what, caterpillar thinks that it's the end of the world, and butterfly knows that it's just the beginning. So how could we embrace a more positive outlook and you know be in this together. Yeah, so that was the overall message we're trying to send out through the rooftop installation. And we are quite lucky because this is quite well received, and it was participated by the neighborhood, and like we have a WhatsApp group on that. Like actually we kind of shut down like since the second lockdown, but then recently we're opening out again. Yeah, so the community has been quite proactive and asking, yeah, when can we come back and plant things. So we do hoping that this will be nurtured into a regular like farming event over the building. Yeah, so you can see like some of the activities from our community gardens, and also the people the entities we partners with. Yeah, and the anticipation is like we can send out a positive manifestation through the visibility of positive transition. Yeah. So this one is the herbs garden next to the building. Yeah. So in terms of the curatorial direction, I think Veronica mentioned earlier, like about some of the intervention we have done. So 2018, 2019, we were doing redesigning Bornean aesthetic. So it's come with the tangible craft and the intangible experience. Yeah. And then after that, like we are looking at in these three selected one is actually for the after the pandemic time. Like so for the Think Theatre is kind of re-looking at in February onward, from February onward, how could we partner with three different and like creative group to look at like a different form of theatre that you can find over here in the landscape of Malaysia. And narrative of soil, I don't think we have time to kind of go through this in depth, but I really wish you can take a look at this as well, because it's some ongoing project that we have, narrative of soil and Big Trip. So for Big Trip, we're looking at collecting the ancestral wisdom and rooted practice around the world. So it's almost like our second Berjalai since our first Pan Borneo road trip. Yeah, so over here I'm just going to quickly show you a video. What I like about Borneo material, it's always constantly changing because of our climate, the constant rain, and also the exposure of sunlight. For example, Belian is continuously changing its texture. They're very strong. They're also very persistent as well. The Borneo craft at the moment is pretty much underexplored. If we want to move further, I think there is a lot of conversation ought to take place. Either it is from within or like coming from outside to come in. Patapian, they always use bamboo, but how about like using bamboo in Borneo to look at the potential of like merging bamboo with tin? Jeep, if you look at her work, there's a lot of like very region-specific lacquer use. How could that lacquer like bring to Borneo and then use on the craft over here? Beiwan, Plum and Chi, they are quite playful in whatever they do. There's a lot of association with how could they mix different material together. Julian, the founder of Weave Artisan Society, and how could he working with the Indonesia Kalimantan craftsmen, and to bring it over to share the expertise with rata maker around Kuching. Wilson from Ji, it's one of the most prestigious timber workshop of Taiwan. So he will work with like the Belian timber over here. Kang Kang from Devoyi Studio, he look at like timber bark to put timber bark in spatial use rather than just stay on the decorative level. 6 designers from Thailand and Taiwan. Within 20 days, they have to bring out the conversation between their respective region and Borneo.
For Kuching, like you have a lot of people, like different nationality in one city, different food, different languages.
Chinese people, Malayu people, and indigenous people, they mix together.
不同的族群，然后交流之后出了新的食物，我觉得这是一件很 特别的一件事。
The identity of the group of people is really impact me, and I feel that they can live together.
And they like a friend and family. It's quite interesting for us to see that.
Very interesting for us. Like you guys already blend in everything together.
It's a lot of different group of people in Borneo and also including this kind of thing. I would like to bring this together to create my product. I bring lacquer from Thailand. It's just like the bridge to put two things that looks totally different. I mean, wood and broken ceramics. But the material that's very interesting that I found here is timber. I mean, billion timber.
我使用的木头是比莲，比莲是一个比较坚硬的木头，它本身的纹理方向是交错的。
We think it's definitely beautiful wood, but it could be more than just a solid wood or
more than a like big piece of
yeah,
furniture.
more than big piece of furniture.
一般家具是比较方正的，那我想做比较细致的，就是有很多线条上面是需要比较多手工的部分。
We wanna introduce the new way of this, be more like a small object.
People can easily touch and like feel the materials, something like that. Yeah.
The concept of movement is from Ngajas dance, which is a traditional dance of Iban's people. We try and reinterpret in our way. It's like a mix past and future together.
One of the local indigenous community, which is called Kenya, they practice a farming technique called the swidden. They would cut down a small area of the forest and then they would grow their food there for a few years, and then after that they would move on. Just before they leave, they would plant rattan in order to rehabilitate the damaged forest. Rattan, besides being a material that we can use for making furniture, baskets and everyday objects, rattan have this amazing ability to heal damaged forests, and that is something I found really amazing and a really important idea I wanted to integrate into the project for Rainforest Fringe Festival.
想用这个材料，然后让观者来看的时候，可以感受到，其实这就是你们当地的树皮。那我希望他们可以感受到，早期他们可能在住在长屋的时候，盖屋顶的时候，他们也是会用到树皮这个材料，然后就是让大家回忆那一段。那其实我来当地的时候才发现，其实这个树皮其实很不容易找，不管是婆拽附近，就是有很多热带雨林，为什么会这个材料会就是没有一直被当地运用？
We have a chance to work with tinsmith people, and we work with Uncle Ho. He told us about he has like 3 sons, 1 daughter, but no one want to do tin anymore.
The owner of this last remaining rattan shop, he mentions that 10 years ago, where we are now in Jalan Bishopsgate, there used to be quite a few rattan makers and rattan sellers, but now
one of the challenge of Borneo craft scene at the moment is like people always perceive that if you're not doing lawyer, architect or doctor, then you're not doing well. These craftsmen, they would rather to give up their skill, and it's a huge problem.
Encourage or sharing inspire together to engage young and senior one. That is really important to keep continue this.
Next generation have to see what they have and develop and evolve for the future.
希望这些工艺不要消失，那我觉得他们可以继续保留下来，然后继续做更多的变化。
To step outside of our comfort zone and to reimagine what this material can do.
By doing so, it will bring in more awareness and also the local people interested in asking the question, like, what can we bring to the table? So that was the last video because I didn't have much time left. So yeah, so these are basically what we have been doing, and I don't think I have time to show the Think Theatre, but we are putting together a theatre project that will be launched in next February. So if you're interested in collaboration, feel free to send in your proposal and portfolio. Yeah, and I will also put it in the chat board as well. Yeah, some of the information needed. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I feel so refreshed, motivated after your presentation. So thank you very much. We would like to now move on to the Q&A session. And we have 30 minutes left. So I would suggest that for audience who would like to post your questions, you can drop it to the Q&A chat box, and we will pick your question up from there. Or you can also raise your hand. Then I will address and call upon you for you to ask your questions. So while waiting for that to happen, I have got one question with me here, and I would read out the question, and I would like to invite Cheng Yi, Shin, and Wendy to address this question because it's a question for all. Yeah. So you have, through your 3 presentations in very different formats and emphasis, one more on placemaking through architecture, one is through GWKL, a particular building, and from Wendy, it's more of the grassroots and crowdsourcing, and subsequently building up to so many diverse possibilities. So your exceptional efforts have developed dynamic environment for living and opening up our minds. How do you see empathetic architecture and design interfacing with your practice? Or is it really like that's your everything now? That's the thing that you do, or how do you proportion it? And how do you see the importance of empathetic architectures and space? Perhaps we can start with Cheng Yi.
I think whenever we come to, I would say specifically about public place, we constantly have to think, what does the public want to do in a more comfortable way so that it will engage them. I think we constantly have to remind ourselves rather than we force them to do what we want as a designer. I think that way of thinking the public behavior and response and translate into the design, it's the key way in the practice to us.
All right, what about Shin?
I guess we like to be as inclusive as possible, but at the same time, we're gonna define what it means to each of us in a sense of project or context, right? So for GWKL, we have quite a clear community that we are serving, which is the local businesses, young entrepreneurs, local artists, and creative, right? So the sort of constant feedbacks getting from this group of stakeholders are the indicators of how we evolve and how we progress within the space and with the program that we curate. So in that sense, we have to first, I think, identify the community that we want to be empathetic with. We can't please everyone, unfortunately, but we just need to be really clear of the agenda and the community that we are serving, and then listen to them and try to work with them.
All right, what about you, Wendy?
I think this question also touched on like since I totally agree with like the other 2 panelists. But at the same time, I also felt that like it's also important for practice to have the instrument to be empathetic, because this actually means that you are structure your practice differently from the conventional like architectural practice. So what does it mean like to listen to your audience, and what does it mean to really figure out the social psyche, the overall social psyche, and really like take that input and inform your design. So these are some of the things that like I was when I'm structuring the content that I was presenting today, despite it's very short, but what I'm trying to deliver as well, because I felt that like this is also the something that we have to constantly thinking about, because we are moving toward the future or the society that is like decentralized, demassify, destandardize. So what does it mean to our practice to listen, like what Shin mentioned, like select our audience and really listen to them, and develop the right instrument for that as well. So it's different when you live in the urban, very urban area, and highly urban nice area, and suburban area.
All right, thank you. For me, I personally think that placemaking has a lot to do or synonymous with the word change, positive change, and positive impact. What kinds of impact would you say you have created through your placemaking initiatives or the works that you have created? And do you actually measure that? Because a lot of times we do things that we think has an impact, but ultimately did it really impact the stakeholders or the end users of that product itself? So in short, the question is, do you really measure the impact? Do you start with an impact, and how do you actually measure that impact? Perhaps we could start with Shin.
Put it in a spotlight. Yes, we try to measure impacts because we strive to be impact-driven social hub that serves the community, right? As I said, and we deploy this method called theory of change. You can look it up. It is quite a useful tool to measure impact. Of course, it has to first now a set of indicators, what kind of impacts you want to measure. So in every case is different, and even within REX, we have different indicators for different programs, because it covers from food to performances to the community, surrounding community. So I guess in short, we do have that measure that we need to set out indicators and then get data, and then data will inform the next action. So it's always in a constant loop.
Thank you, Shin. What about Wendy?
It's me. Yeah, so agree with that as well. Like, because with different project, like with the nature of the project itself, it will already define the indicators. But at the same time, like apart from those numeric indicators, we also want to make sure like the project we do actually like bring out some thinking, bring out some statement. So it's very important for us to kind of like manage or balance these two simultaneously. Because there are some meaningful project doesn't really have an audience, but does it mean that as a hub you stop doing it? And I think it's something that like is very critical to think about and to reflect on, especially for us as a hub.
I think adding to that, right, Wendy and I had this conversation before, how to measure impact in the things that we do, because in fact we need to set out our own parameters and our standard. So it's for me, we are still trying to perfect the model. I guess it's always evolving, because as you said, there are a lot of intangibles, right, in this measurement. So that's something that we constantly try to figure out how to quantify.
Cheng Yi, your context is slightly different. how would you, do you actually think about impact, and how do you actually measure that?
For a very long time, I always thought about the post evaluations of each project. I think for the short-term project like the Petronas Tree Pavilions, that has attracted a huge, big crowd within very few days. Then they dismantle it, where we are not able to conduct any research. But then I think there's a two kind of thing we're talking about. One is the qualitative, the other one is the quantitative. Of course, the on the qualitative part, I think that is much harder because sometimes you might only connect to certain small group of people where it has a lot of meaning, like what Wendy say, it's meaningful to a small group of people. How do we measure that? I think this is a big shortcomings to our practice that I was hoping that we can invest more times to really reevaluate everything that we have done. How do they engage? But of course, for a lot of like much smaller and long-term project, we constantly go back to interview the local people, to just randomly ask the user, the owner, how does the response? I think this is how we grow as a practice.
Thank you, Chen-Yi. I have one question coming in for Wendy. How do you find or choose your artists? And is greening an integral consideration in their use of materials?
Okay, so I think it's come in stages, because at the beginning of the the phase of when we set up our platform, we were looking at not necessarily every artist that we engage focusing on the sustainable business, but when it comes to our later phase, like the one we done in Singapore and also the one we collaborate with Taiwan, it was more like looking at the ecosystem scale of change when it comes to recycling the plastic, harvesting the plastic waste from the sea and turn them into product, or other like sea garbage, and how could we do set out recycle them and turn them into something useful. Yeah, but when it comes to the the beginning stage, I think each of the curatorial project actually has different purpose, so I wouldn't kind of do a sweeping statement and say, oh yeah, they are all about greening, because I think some of them are more about focusing on the local industry, like redesigning Bornean craft is more about the local industry. The local redesigning Bornean experience is more about relooking at the local experience industry, which is something that haven't been done before by the local people, like fine dining, for example, and the Museum of Senses, so yeah, I hope that answer.
Thank you for your response. I've got another question coming in, and this question is for the three panelists. The structures you created, or the programs infrastructure that you created, how long do you realistically expect or hope for them to last as you have imagined them? Do you consider or integrate elements of future adaptability in the design?
I can talk a bit. Currently, we are recycling the Petronas Tree Pavilions. Since the day one, we were commissioned to do that structure, how to make the entire thing is completely reusable, recyclable, and easy to install. That was the first principle, even though the client were just willing to spend a one-off money just to do that. So right now we are in the second phase of reusing it for another show. And then I think the durability and adaptability, it really depends eventually on how the stakeholder or the owner to keep up their maintenance in the long run, something slightly beyond our control, although as much as we would like to make it very adaptable and reusable. in the long run.
All right, what about Shin?
I look at this term structure in two ways. First, we inherited existing structure, which is an adaptive use project, right, of the old cinema. That structure, we don't expect it to last for too long. I mean, as I said, we don't know. We have a 10 years lease, but we don't know what's going to happen after that. So the other structure that we're really focusing on is the internal structure that based on the theory of change, the social impact, the programming, that the creative capital that we try to raise within this period of time of using this physical structure. So the intangible structure that also tagging along and grow out of this, hopefully have a second life after this. So we're not too adamant about the physical spaces, because I think there's one thing about placemaking, right? It should be adaptable. You should be always changing, always have feedback loop to adjust to the situation.
Actually, my comment is similar to you know, our current space, Think and Think, and also the creative capitals that have grown like since we took over. Yeah. But and touch on what Cherny mentioned about, like, you know, sometimes you need to convince when it's come to another type of project, like when we are building installation or building like temporary structure. Yeah, it is definitely like some work to be done to kind of convince the client to willing to invest on the sustainable plan strategy. Yeah, but in a way we can reframe that as part of their, you know, PR package as well. So this is more likely to get it through. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I have a question coming in for Shin. Does your team do market research? And if so, what are the tools you use for feedback?
Market research. I should quite get what it means by market research.
Probably a needs analysis on what are some of the things that you would bring in. For example, like redefining dating, or whether it's redefining what a cinema is, you would bring in programs. Is that based on certain selection criteria that you do, or it's just like intuition?
Our team is very sensitive towards what's going on I would say in general in the society, from culinary to art and performance to the trend that's going on. So what we try and do is we have an overarching idea of how we want to provide the platform for the marginalized, or even the bridge the gap. So we try to avoid those findings that we find what's trending, whatever is in a huge demand. But we rather focus on something more timeless, like the local talent, the incredible artists we have locally, the incredible entrepreneurs that is try to foster their own crowd and create their own businesses. So we are constantly reaching out, of getting reached out by this group of people because of the identity we built throughout the past 1 to 2 years. So that sets out the kind of very clear platform of what we are, and hence it does meet the need for this group of people.
Okay, thank you. I have a burning question to ask, perhaps to both Shin and Wendy. Do collaborators and stakeholders come knocking on your door, or it's the opposite, where you have to go and pitch to stakeholders for possible collaborations? Perhaps Wendy, you can go first.
I thought Shin is going to do it first. I think like it's probably worked both ways, rather than like just saying that, okay, you have to constantly pitching. It's going to be very tiring, pitching is very tiring job. It's a full-time job. Yeah, so So I felt that, like, at the beginning of the, at the planning stage, so that's why we have that testing device, phase. So that was also a phase of like pitching to others, like what this building can be used. Yeah, and I'm sure that with Rex KL as well. So when it's come to later stage, when people slowly seeing the potential of the building of the place, there are more proposal that coming from the ground rather than like we being the one that is like more proactive. Yeah. So yeah.
We are constantly in pitching. That's why we are constantly tired. When you mention stakeholders, right? This one word is such a painful word. It means so many things to us, right? From the building owner, actual building landlord of the space, to agencies that we represent or partner with, to the very immediate neighbors that we are dealing with, right? Those could be street vendors. They've been there for generation outside of Rex. So it's a really demanding work that I feel like, we're constantly pitching to everyone, even our staff, right? The people working with us, to always realign our vision and to convince them this is, I guess that's the journey that we embark on, right? We just gotta keep doing it. We believe in something and it's always changing. So it's always updates that we need to inform them. Sometimes they got tired. You just told me this and then now it's changed again. Yeah, sorry, this is how it is because of the nature of the business, right? So yeah, pitching is a constant work. If you want to sign up for this, just be ready for that.
Yeah, I think you need a lot of stamina. I'm going to ask the final question, mindful of the time. And this question is related to dissemination, i.e. media and social media. Social media has transformed how places and spaces is perceived, designed, and utilized. What is your position on this, and how has this, both social media and media, influence your work or placemaking initiatives? Perhaps we can start with Cheng.
Oh, I would have the shortest answer. I think I'm not in an operation mode as what Wendy and Shin constantly engage. So I think as a designer that only involve mostly that, which I always prefer at the early stage, is I don't need to engage with too much with the social media, which is something it's a personal thing that I always keep myself as there's a detachment from social media in the practice. So I think this is the one that I totally have no answer to give.
To me, to us, social media is almost like architecture. It's a tool that, or means that we use to convey a message, to deliver a product, perhaps, or even communicate with public or users. So in that sense, it's just like the building itself, how we engage with the users, right, on social media. So I think the same philosophy just passed down. We use it quite, because the demographic that we're targeting on, that they live on social media, right? So that is inevitable, the only means that we use for communication for this moment.
What about Wendy?
Yeah, I think we can talk about this in so many different angles, because we started, like just I explained like earlier, Borneo Lab actually started as an online documentation, rather than just like a conventional architectural practice, to put it this way. And the presence online is quite fundamental to developing this platform. And certainly, like at the beginning stage of the social media, like when we were looking at our strategy, it was more about presence. It was more about like frequency. It was more about like regularity to kind of build out that that visibility. But then after a while, like certainly with the project we are doing, and also with the stakeholder that like we spoke to, the collaborator that we engage with, we realized the, you know, with every presence, it actually has to carry meanings. It has to carry message. So it doesn't really mean that like when you appear a lot, you are more important. So how do you shape that? How do you build that? And how do you like negotiating with different platform to convey the right message? Because the message could get diluted when it is like over bombarded. So how do you manage that? It's also one of the art like that, like we are constantly thinking about. We have no answer like what is the right thing or wrong thing to do, but it's so important to make sure that like what you have a stance in whatever you put together and deliver.
Sorry, I have a few more questions coming in, and we will take those questions. This question is specifically for Chen Yi. For the Red Hill Gallery, how you mentioned that it drops off its design as an experience through the forest. Why was it important to find context in the site, in your opinion, even though you mentioned the site was tabula rasa, which basically void of any context?
I always believe there's no such thing as completely tabula rasa. And of course, a lot of inspiration really come from where the building or the project is located, rather than it's completely created from the blanks. So when we discover this patch of rubble estate forest, we thought that contrast of being so raw, so original as existing before anything, create a huge contrast to this completely new flat ground, new residential developments. I think that contrast of before you were hoping to see a wild sort of building, that rawness was the reminder of the context, the history, and what was it went through before. I think that contrast is what we were looking for to remind the visitor.
The next question is for both Shin and Wendy. I will simplify the question a little bit, because just now we talked about how do you actually pitch for projects and how do you select them. So I would summarize the question as when you select the activities or programs to be inserted or intervene into the site, was there any backlash from the community on why it was there or why those activities were introduced? Shin, were there? Since there are many more stakeholders in your site, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are two things that we always fall back on. Backlash is definitely not one of them. Cultural equity is really what we're really pushing forward to. We believe that equality in all cultures and expression, despite race, ethnicity, age, and sexual orientation, whatever it is, that is what we are pushing through, and that serves the sort of gap in the society. So the program always falls back on this as a guideline. So again, there's no right or wrong in what they do or what we do, I believe. If you believe in cultural equity, this is, we're all equal, right? Another thing is social impact that we try to measure or try to achieve, right, in our own sense for now. So that is our guiding principles for things that we try to incubate or curate or insert into the space.
All right, thank you. Chen Yi, you wanted to respond to that?
Yes, because I think for GWKL, every time I visit that, I understand it's an extremely tiring project. I think one thing I'm curious and I care about is the operator, which is Shin, and the relationship with the building owner. Has there ever any change along these few years?
Yes. I mean, this again is not just me, right? It's a team that we believe in the project and we're working on it. The relationship with the owner is constantly changing due thanks to lockdown as well. Couldn't afford to cover most of the rent. So that is this again pitching in place, right? That the owner changes his sort of perception towards what we do throughout the years, and they also witness the sort of passion we put in. They understand that we are just a bunch of idiots, perhaps, running around trying to build his assets for him. But at the same time, we are, not, we're quite transparent in the situation we are in, right? And we sort of have open book with them, and they understand our situation. They understand the vision. So again, it's back to that stakeholders management. How do we constantly inform them and communicate with them? So yeah, it's like a relationship, right? Any relationship is all about communication and so constant interaction.
Okay, thank you, Shin. Maybe Wendy, have you received any backlash in terms of responses?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of my seminar, I mentioned about some of the backlash from the community. Yeah, and I wasn't even sure that my name is probably reported in the local nearby police station just because of the the nuisance created in the neighborhood, which is kind of expected, when we are turning the residential house into an event ground. Yeah, it's understandable. But then so I think for us it's constantly trying to adapt, and also trying to understand what is the implication of that, and how could we change, how could we optimize the situation as well. But in terms of the question about the right program or the right message to kind of implement it on site, as it is the existing site, I think it's so important, like what Shin mentioned earlier about it's we need to select the audience, but at the same time it's also important for us as a group to kind of think about, because we started as a content platform. It's a content platform. It wasn't really just a platform to kind of build the ecosystem around. So of course ecosystem building is very important, but it's also important for us to kind of realize that the reflection of ourselves to in the long run, what does it mean to be there, because the place is not necessarily permanent, but then the content will last. This is as our experience, and we see ourselves as a 100 years platform, and we now is coming to our 4th year, so we are still in the baby stage. So sometimes it's okay to be a bit rebellious, and a lot of time you will receive a lot of backlash, and that's okay, and it's quite okay to be scary as well. But it's so important during this stage of the development, we make sure because since we knew that the place is going to be impermanent anyway, so what would be the best out of these few years time to kind of build the story, the kind of story we want for our youth. Of course, like what Shin mentioned about, there are stories needed to be told, like the story of equality, the story of social diversity need to be told, and sometimes it's not necessarily a popular one. So how could we tell that kind of story and enable to be the enabler of that kind of story? That will be more meaningful for us.
Jump in,
I'd like to add on that. I think this is a really interesting discussion, right? The duality of architecture and program exists because of the architecture. And Wendy mentioned that the program sometimes lasts longer than even the architecture they had inhabited. So that, to me, the duality is really interesting in this age of time, that the architecture becomes like a case, right? A host for the longer content that we are creating within the structure. But it sort of have this feedback loop of what the architecture how the architecture inform the content and how it then recreate the architecture of its own. So to me, there's no right content or wrong content. It's just it's just content, and we need to again have the principles of how we work with, and also the good thing about programming or curating is that we can create a lot, we can do a lot more than architecture itself. So to me, the life within that static building, right, is more interesting, and people tend to forget the mistake you did quite quickly after it get buried by tons of events after that. So yeah, it's about quantity at the same time. We talk about quality. So that's my.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. We have reached to almost the end of this session, and we can conclude from this dynamic session that some of the key takeaway keywords are like empathy, positive change, impact, collective, collaborate, voice, and more importantly, placemaking is about a group of people may or may not have that infrastructure, but they come together to build something for the same purpose. And of course, we need a lot of stamina for that. So thank you once again for the three panelists, Cheng-Yi, Shin, and Wendy, joining us today for the Luminary on Designing for Placemaking. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Shalini Ganendra, founder of Gallery Weekend Kuala Lumpur, to say a few words before we end the session. Shalini, over to you.
Thank you very much. And it's such a good sign that we've actually gone over time, for which I apologize a little bit, but it was just so interesting, the time vanished. Thank you very much to Wendy, to Shin, and to Veronica for the excellent moderating. Your presentations were just a delight to look at and leaves impressions on memory, as well as really aspirations in terms of what we can expect from you in the future. And we look forward to supporting your endeavors and to enjoying and participating in them. I think this session is the perfect session to launch the Luminary program from GWKL, because we are about expanding that awareness of placemaking, which is, in addition to what Veronica, those key terms that she stated, it's really about extending culture to community, and that appreciation of our culture, however we may define it, whether it be traditional or contemporary or futuristic and aspirational, in terms of the leadership that we want to guide our communities through. So thank you very, very much. We look forward to keeping in touch, and we hope that our audience has enjoyed. I'm sure the audience has enjoyed the session. Thank you for joining us. Do join us for the rest of the Luminary program this weekend. Thanks so much to Kenny of PAD and Kai of the tech team for the very smooth tech management. And we'll see you all anon. There are many activities to follow through on for the next 2 weeks, and we'll be visiting your sites and recs, as well as maybe doing something in Sarawak next year. How's that, Wendy? Right, okay. We'll see you soon. Thanks all. Brilliant session. Thank you very much.
All right, so do visit the Gallery Weekend Kuala Lumpur website and Facebook page to follow their activities. So thank you once again, and have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.